Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Fish Bites, the Miami Herald's Miami Marlins podcast. I'm Jordan McPherson. He's Andre Fernandez. Dre, opening day. It's finally almost here.
Opening day, and let's get people excited about it because I think, understandably, right now I think everybody's in March Madness mode and talking about college basketball. How couldn't you with not just the Canes, but Florida
FAU
Atlantic
too.
FAU is in it too. I mean, this is a game that you see in November. That used to be just a non-conference, regular, everyday game. You know, in the middle, like maybe the second, third game of the season. We're one win on each side away from that being the national championship game. I mean, that you and I will not see many crazier things, if ever, if any, than what we're going to see potentially this weekend in basketball. But that's in basketball. Baseball, Thursday, Marlins, Mets. Here we go. Down to business. Now it's for real.
Yeah, again, we got, like you said, Marlins, Mets, Sandy versus Scherzer for game one. First game for new manager Skip Schumaker. We got all the storylines to talk about. Will the Marlins actually be able to compete in the East? Will their new additions make the impact they were hoping they would make? Got a lot that we'll be able to dive into on this episode and to use this to springboard us throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what the new additions can do because, we got a little taste of it now in the World Baseball Classic. I want to see what Luis Arias can do. I want to see what some of these additions to the bullpen. The bullpen seems like it's we haven't stopped talking about how much better it needs to be. I think for like 3 years now, I believe. Maybe this is the year with some of these guys like an AJ Puck, Austin Barnes, guys like that have come in and made this, hopefully make this better and hopefully shore this thing up so they don't blow leads when they do have them. But, let's dive in. Let's jump right in right now. And you know what? I know Skip Schumaker is the big one because, for, all this time we had Don Mattingly here, and now it's going to be weird not seeing Donnie in the dugout anymore. But it's Skip's time. And, you've seen him throughout the spring, Jordan, and I mean, he brings a lot of that influence from the Cardinals organization, the certain way of doing things that's been successful. But in this day and age with the, I guess you could call it the reduced influence of the manager in a certain sense, not so much in the clubhouse sense, how much of an impact can he make? And I don't know, what do you think? You've talked to him a lot more, than I have, which is zero so far directly in person. So what's your thoughts on Skip so far?
Yeah, after watching spring training in general between him personally and his coaching staff, specifically the hitting staff, watching just how up close and personal they were with everybody on everything with the backfield, seeing after every drill, really a lot of times after every rep with batting practice, you see either Skip or hitting coach Brant Brown or assistant hitting coach John Mabry going up to the guys and literally reviewing what they just did right as it happened live, and then going, okay, your next time around, you've got to do this. You got to tweak this. Oh, look at this. I didn't see that with the previous coaching staffs over my first 4 years on the beat. Granted, 2 of those years, I didn't really get as much access with COVID restrictions and whatnot, but you just see a lot more in the moment adjustments, in the moment, just chats with the players that you can see the players are resonating with, especially with the staff trying to implement so much new information, brand new philosophy for, especially on the hitting side. There's a lot of information that they're trying to give to the players in such a short amount of time. And with them being as up close and personal, and for a guy like Schumaker, who isn't that far removed from his playing days. I mean, he last played 2015, 2016. So he was around, he was a player during this high analytic at the early ages of StatCast. So he understands it from both the player and the coaching side, how to balance the use of analytics versus the feel and the trust of just the eye test. He's been making a lot of those adjustments on site and also just building that good rapport inside the clubhouse. And that's going to be one of the main areas, is him being able to manage a group that's basically entirely brand new and devoid of the players who were the leaders in that clubhouse last year. I mean, Miguel Rojas is gone. Pablo Lopez, who was one of the veterans, is gone. You've lost a lot of the big voices in that clubhouse, and it's a matter of how is he going to be able to keep everybody in line, regardless of wins, losses, or whatever. How is he going to be able to keep everybody in that locker room, in that clubhouse together? That's going to be one of the main things I'll be watching, in addition to how he manages everything in game.
Yeah, it's basically, he's like a modern perspective, a modern baseball manager. I guess, like you said, kind of living the world that baseball's become now. But it's a team in transition, because a lot of different pieces, in some cases, potentially better, as we know, some of the guys with experience that we've seen do good things elsewhere. But, a lot of moving around too. You have guys that aren't exactly playing in spots that they're used to or never have in some cases, as we know. So that whole transition, plus the new rules that are being implemented too. How's that? I mean, everyone's going to go through everyone's going present tense through that already in spring training and adjusting to that. So it'll be interesting. Some guys maybe a little less than others, since they played in the WBC, where it was old school meaning 2022, playing the way they're used to. So how's that going to affect things now when it's for real and it's not an exhibition setting and you're not, quote unquote, working on things? You're playing, you're playing for real. You're going more of a marathon than in the urgency factor you had in the WBC, where every game mattered. But at the same time, it's going to be more of that going forward. So a lot of different factors on this team, I think, that are going to be interesting to watch in the first few weeks. I mean, Yuli Gurriel is the one I know that the new acquisitions, the one that made the opening day roster. And, I'm interested to see just, his bat, how he handles things when he does play at first base. And then throughout the infield, I mean, you've seen some of this new look infield so far, with Wendell. I mean, John Birdie's always been that guy that you can plug in and out of the lineup depending on matchup. So you know what you get with him. I mean, I think he's going to benefit. We've talked about that. He's going to benefit from these bigger bases, from these, these new rules that should increase base stealing for him, which he's been good at as it is. And then, of course, the big question, this adventure in center field, is it going to be an adventure, or is it going to be something that we're all going to be like, wow, Jazz has really taken to it? How's he looked in the spring?
Yeah, so I'll start with Jazz first, since that is the biggest story, or at least the one that most people are going to be paying attention to. I would still say expect some growing pains and adjustments early, especially since this is a brand new position for him. He only played, I think it was about 85 innings during spring training in live game settings in center field so far during spring training. He's, again, taking the reps every day. He has a guy in John Jay who he's able to rely on and work with and talk with every day. Really great guy to have on that side of it. He's really close with Juan Pierre, another guy who great to have as a mentor in terms of learning defense, learning the role. And he really got a lot of the different scenarios of what plays he might have to deal with, between having to track the ball and the wind taking in a different direction, having to deal with a 10-hop ball that was a grounder up the middle and having to quickly get the ball and throw it home, having to read a route off of a ball that was a broken bat. Those are the only things that you can really replicate when you're in a live setting. You're not going to see broken bat fly balls when you're just taking batting practice. And when you do, you're really not looking for them, because most guys are just trying to hit home runs in batting practice nowadays. But you saw some growth, which, again, there was nowhere to go but up from when he started spring. But there are still going to be some adjustments, I would say, with Jazz and center. As for the infield itself, I'm interested to see how this works, because you look at first base, you'll have Garrett Cooper as the main guy to start the year with Yuli Gurriel backing him up. And I think for me, that's a matter of having Yuli be the backup early is a matter of just making sure he's ready. Because, again, he only had 2 weeks of camp once he signed. So they want to make sure he's ready. They'll have him get spot starts at first. He'll occasionally make a start designated hitter, be a pinch hitter off the bench, which, as a guy with his bat, if he's able to bounce back after a struggle in 2022, that could be a pretty dangerous weapon off the bench if he can return even to a semblance of his form from the years before that. Gene Segura or Luis Arraez at second base. He came in as a second baseman, was mostly first last year, but he's a guy who came up through the minors at second base, so there shouldn't be issue there. Shortstop is going to be interesting because Joey Wendell and John Birdie, again, they're both capable infielders, but they both have been primarily utility guys throughout their career. I believe combined between the two of them, they only have about 100 combined starts at shortstop between the two of them. Joey Wendell was great there last year, but again, it was about 30 some odd starts. So to see how he handles that position over the course of a full season will be interesting to see.
Can he handle the grind? Can he handle the grind of 160? Well, not 162 because no one plays 162, but you know what I mean? Like over 100 games.
Yeah. And then Gene Segura at third, he's only played 25 games there in his career. And he only got about 7 or 8 games there during spring training because he was at World Baseball Classic for a week and got 2 at-bats there. So seeing how that whole group gels together and see how much of the improved offense gets negated, or if it does, by what happens with the defense, because we don't really know what to expect of all these guys in new spots. So how much of the offensive gain will be negated by the defense, or will it not? That's going to be a storyline to follow, especially through that first month.
The Marlins historically, more often than not, have been a good defensive team. And that goes back to, the days with Bone, coaching back there and all of that. So that's the question is, can they still be that type of a team, or is this going to be a team because some guys are playing a little bit in different spots than they're used to? Could it lead to some mistakes? And then that's the thing. A team like this that needs to contend with all these heavy hitters in the National League, especially in the East, you have to be fundamentally sound. You have to have a base, which they have in terms of their starting pitching, as we know, primarily their starting pitching, but their pitching in general. Pitching and defense. If you have those two, at least you have the base to potentially compete.
Especially when your pitchers are, especially with the way the Marlins are, they're guys who pitch the contact. So they need that defense to be stepping up and being steady in order for them to keep getting the results that they've gotten over the last few years.
And with less shifting, there's going to be more. There's going to be more potential hits now. Obviously, when that, I know it's not going to go away entirely 100%, but it's going to go away a big. Big sense where you're not going to be able to overload these shifts like you used to. So that's going to change a lot. And then you're speeding pitchers up with the clock and you have more base stealing. So all of that defense is going to be, so much more vital than even more than it's been. So that's a huge part to all of this. And I think that infield is going to be the infield and the outfield, because especially in center field, like we were talking about with Jazz. But, speaking of those pitchers, we know we'll get to the rotation. The rotation, we've talked plenty about how strong they're going to be, but the bullpen's the question. And like you mentioned, Braxton Garrett could be the swing man, kind of a guy that could spot start. He's going to be the long reliever, but there's a lot of new names there. I think I called him Austin by mistake. Matt Barnes, AJ Puck, Floro's back, that Chagua is there. Stephen Oker starting the season on the IL, but eventually could be a part of what they do back there. Huascar Brazovan is going to have could have a key role in there too. So I don't know. I mean, again, it's kind of, who kind of really emerges as a dependable, high leverage crew there. Not just a closer, but those 7th, 8th inning guys to protect leads should this team become competitive on a consistent basis.
Yeah, so the thing is, I'm going to start with the closer. It just Schumaker has basically said that they're going to go most likely closer by committee, but for me, it's looking like AJ Puck's going to be the first guy to get that chance to pitch the 9th. He's
been good, hasn't he?
He's been very solid throughout the spring. He's the guy, whenever we talk about the bullpen, it seems like that's the guy that Schumaker always circles back to. Yeah. And again, when you're a 6'7" lefty who throws 95, 96 plus, has a solid breaking ball, and has added a splitter to his arsenal as well. Because remember, Puck, before he got traded to the Marlins from Oakland was originally going to use him as a starter. So he was trying to add pitches back to his arsenal. So he had his 2 fastballs, he had the changeup, he had a slider, and he was trying to add a splitter into there as well. So his thought process was, I was already working on it. It was looking good. Why am I going to scrap it just because I'm going to be in the bullpen?
Right. So now you might have a dangerous closer with a 4-pitch mix that's effective. That's even deadlier. I know.
And then the thing is, and then behind him, you're going to have 3 guys in Matt Barnes, Tanner Scott, and Dylan Floro, who between 2021 and 2022, all three of them have recorded at least 20 saves apiece. So you have three guys behind him who have closing experience, who have done that job before. So you actually have some depth in your high leverage spots compared to last year, where it was basically like, okay, the Marlins are in a close game. Gonna have to go with Stephen Oker in the 7th. Gonna have to go with Dylan Floro in the 8th. Gonna have to go with Tanner Scott in the 9th every single time and roll them over and over and over. This time they actually have some options in there. You have those four guys. JT Chagua was a 7th, 8th inning guy for the Rays. Stephen Oker, when he comes back, he was very steady in the 7th spot, lefty who can get both lefties and righties out. And then you have Huascar Brazaban and Andrew Nardi, who are likely going to be more of the mid-inning, lower leverage relief spots, but both of them can pitch multiple innings. So between them and Braxton Garrett, it gives you your long-ish guys to make sure that you don't have to go to your higher leverage guys until those situations. And again, like you said, they're going to be key. Remember, last year, Marlins played 64 one-run games. They won 24-40 in those games that were decided by one run. The Marlins are going to need, when they get to those spots where it comes to the back end of the rotation, you're going to need to figure out which of those guys can do it. And again, Puck seems like the guy to start it, but they have options that they can rotate in if they need to move guys in and out of roles, depending on who's producing and who's not.
If you truly believe this team has a chance this year to win, to be around 500 or better, it's a must that they reverse that trend from last year. That they're
Correct.
You'll be in a lot. I think they will be again in a lot of those games, but you can't be playing 350 ball in those types of games or whatever it was, last season. It's got to be significantly better to have a chance to win 80, 85, whatever, whatever. If that becomes a realistic thing, it's only going to happen if they win those close games. And that, every baseball team is going to play close games. A lot of them. It's just parity the way it is in the league. But they took it to another level last year. They were in one-run games like left and right last year. And some of them weren't, some of them could have been a little deceiving because it was games where maybe they narrowed the gap and then ended up just losing by one, but it wasn't really a close game. But they were in a lot of those where if the bullpen had either stopped the bleeding, kept it close, or protected the lead, and a lot of times that failed to happen. So it'll be interesting to see if these guys can come through. But, the rotation, though, strong as ever. I mean, we don't have to say anything about Sandy. I know he didn't have he enjoyed what was a great WBC. They didn't have the best start in the WBC, but I think, he showed what he can do as usual. And I think, each guy has an interesting storyline because his is coming off, obviously, the pinnacle of winning the Cy Young. How does he follow that up? Win another Cy Young, right? That easier said than done, but how does he handle the spotlight? Sandy is now a name in baseball, which is, pretty cool to think about where he was 5 years ago, but now he is a household name in baseball. But how does he handle that? How does he handle the stardom now, that we're going to see over the course of the season? Jesus Luzardo was better last year, and he carries some of that over. Edward Cabrera, who's had dealt with injuries and stuff like that, can he build off a little bit of last year? Does Johnny Cueto still have something in the tank, or is he done? I mean, we'll find out. We'll find out if he can be that kind of a contributor for however long he's in that rotation. And of course, I want to know what you think about what you've seen out of Trevor Rogers, because it was not pretty a lot of times last year, and a little up and down this spring too, wasn't it?
Well, the thing is, it was really just one bad outing for Trevor this spring. He had one outing where he gave up, I think it was 5 or 6 runs.
Maybe because I saw that one bad outing. I thought maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, but all of his other outings were he gave up no runs his first two. His third outing, it all came on one bad pitch that was a 2-run home run. The fourth outing was completely rough. He basically said, my mechanics were off, just got to fix it, and he bounced back the final one. For me, Trevor Rogers is, if I did identify one of the 5, Trevor Rogers is my X factor in this rotation for just how the group overall is going to perform. But really, if you go 2 through 4, Luzardo, Cabrera, and Rogers, if all 3 of them are able to take that next step, that group of 3 guys who are 25, 26 years old, and be able to show that they can all be if they can all take that next step. Luzardo, again, was fantastic outside missing 2 months with the forearm injury. Cabrera was great outside missing the 2 injuries, which again, can they stay on the mound? Availability being the best ability, or however that phrase is actually used. If those two can produce the way they produced without getting injured, and if Trevor Rogers can look more like the rookie of the year runner-up than the guy who was just in a complete mental funk last year, the Marlins very well could have the top 1 through 4 in terms of starting pitchers in Major League Baseball by looking at
in terms of depth. Yeah.
In terms of depth, they're 1 through 4. I could arguably put them up with almost any other team's rotations as they stand right now and say, yeah, you have a chance to win these games.
If those two are good, it totally raises the floor of what this whole rotation can accomplish. And even if, let's say, if Cueto, I said, let's see what he's still got. Let's say it doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. The 5th spot, I'm not so worried about, because you've got people on the farm that they're kind of waiting in the wings that will eventually can come up and do something. Yeah. And that's something
they can always flip Braxton up there also if they feel like things aren't working out. They got him there too.
You can see if that's working too. I mean, the 5th spot in the rotation at that point, I mean, there's many ways of fixing that in the end. But the solid core in the middle behind Sandy is the key, because that's the thing. You can't just all be him, obviously. And you're replacing a guy who was a steady, above average guy, borderline, I mean, all-star type, and now starting on opening day for the Minnesota Twins. So, you got to replace that, that void in the rotation. So one of those, if one of those guys can step in there and do that, that's going to be huge.
Yep, no doubt about it. And yeah, Pablo is going to be missed. He's actually going to get to pitch against them.
You'll see him like in 2 weeks. You'll be fine.
Yep.
He's gonna start against them now.
Yep.
When the Twins come in.
Yeah. He's going to start either depending on how the Twins shake it out, because Twins only have 3 games in their first set, so there'll be games 4, 5, and 6 for them when they come to Miami. Depending on how they use the off day and whatnot, he'll either start either the Tuesday or the Wednesday of that Twins series.
And good for him. Yeah. Good for him too. I mean, how about that? Starting on opening day, that's great.
And again, Pablo Lopez, and we've talked about this since the trade happened. The Pablo Lopez for Luis Arias trade was basically the trade of one of the nicest guys in baseball for one of the nicest guys in baseball. Luis Arias and Pablo Lopez, again, they are 1A and 1B in terms of the niceness factor. And they got to be teammates for about a week and a half with Team Venezuela and the WBC as well. And they have formed their own little friendship as well. You were able to see it on the Instagram posts and everything. So it'll be cool. It'll be cool that we'll actually get to see the Lopez versus Arias matchup that we weren't sure if we were going to get, because the only way Pablo would have pitched was if he was the opening day starter or the 4 or 5. And he wasn't going to be the 4 or 5 in that Twins rotation.
Granted, it was a cup of coffee because we only covered Venezuela for like less than a week. But I did notice that about Arias every time he, and especially in that setting, which is like, the crazy setting where there's like a ton of reporters there. I mean, not like what he's going to see day to day in the Marlins clubhouse, but he saw it there for Team Venezuela, and the way he handled himself, I could see some of the things you're talking about him. So, I want to see not just the nice guy, I want to see the bat too, because steady contact hitter, and you saw that by him winning the batting title, but sneaky power too, because he belted like that one game where he hit 2. Those were shots. He did. Those were not cheap, and
correct
to right field where it's conducive to those power hitters in that ballpark. So if he can do that every so often, that's going to be a huge plus for that lineup.
Yeah, no, it'll be great, especially since when we look at what this lineup is going to look like. Arias is going to be that table setter again, AL batting champion last year. And again, like you said, he has sneaky power. I hope he didn't use up all of his home runs in that one game. But again, he's a guy who's going to hit to all fields. He's a guy who, and I never thought I'd say this, made it look easy to hit off Sandy Alcantara. He ended up the backfield games the first time he did. He got 2 hits there. He got a double. I believe it was a double off him in the WBC game.
Yeah, he got him there too.
Yeah, so Arias is going to be the Marlins leadoff hitter. When we look through the rest of the lineup, the 2 and 3 spots are either going to be Jorge Soler or Jazz Chisholm Jr., just based on what we've seen in terms of how they order things in spring training and what Skip has told us. He likes power in the 2-hole and he likes a run producer in the 3 spot. So it's conducive of Soler and Jazz in 2 and 3. I personally would put Soler 2 and Jazz 3 just to split up the lefties, just so you don't have 2 lefties back to back. But we have seen some spots where he's put Arise 1 and Jazz 2. We'll see how that works out. 4 and 5.
Yeah. I was smirking and shaking my head because it ain't the first time we've seen power in the 2-hole here in a Marlins lineup. This takes me back 5 years. Remember when they put Stanton 2?
Yeah.
And remember how he went on that tear. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Arise 1, Soler and Jazz 2 and 3, looking like Cooper and obviously El Garcia in the 4 and 5. Take your order. They've been primarily putting Cooper 4 and Avi 5. The 6, 7, 8 will really depend on whether Sanchez, the lefty, or De La Cruz, the righty, is playing among the 2. But it's going to be in those 3 spots, Gene Segura, Joey Wendell, and one of Sanchez or De La Cruz. Again, that gives you Wendell lefty, Segura righty, and then Sanchez and DLC being lefty-righty. Pick how you want to order them. And then Jacob Stallings in the 9-hole. When Nick Fortes is catching, you could potentially move him up and possibly put him in the 6 or 7 spot because he has enough in terms of contact and power to warrant being up there. But that's sort of how the lineup is looking, at least to start the year. That seems how things will form out. Yuli Gurriel, when he's been in games, he's basically been around the 5 or 6 spots. So take that for what it's worth for when he's in the lineup for spot starts as well.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see how they mix it up, but that's pretty much, I mean, you've seen it. I think you've seen a good 80, 90% likely blueprint for it, from what you've seen in the spring. And now that takes us to the everybody's favorite time, make picks. I mean, you have a few of them here. I know we were going to rattle some of these off. Pacoda has them winning 79.7, which means 80. Fangraphs has them also at 80. The over-under betting line, though, 75.5. So to be generous, let's round up 76. Mm-hmm. All it would be, at least a little bit better than last season for sure, but still not a playoff team. But if it's more toward the 80-ish window, I mean, let's see how the 80 looks too, but it would be progress. It would be progress if it can happen. But I mean, I don't know. I think the last one you listed here, which says that all of these still have them 4th in the NL East, I think is the biggest factor. And I agree with that. I do think last year I had them 4th and ended up being the case because, I just thought they were better than the Nationals who were in shambles at the time. And still probably the case going into this season. But last year, I disagreed with people that thought they'd be in the top 3 because I thought they were still way behind. The gap's narrowed, so maybe I'm still gonna pick them 4th, just like everybody else. But I'll give them a little more of a chance to maybe surprise some people, and if things break right, maybe topple one of those top 3 to jump right into the middle of the pack in the division, maybe. But it's a better outlook. It's a little bit better outlook than last year in that sense. But you saw him firsthand last spring. What do you think? Yeah.
So what I'll say is this. If they do end up getting to 80 wins, that's an 11-win improvement from last year. Right. That would be, if not the largest year-over-year jump, it would have to be in the top 2 or 3 if it does end up happening. The problem for the Marlins is, again, it's just the nature of where they're playing. Again, when you're in the same division as the Phillies, who ended up being the last team to get into the playoffs and made the World Series, and the Mets and the Braves, who both had 101 wins, and the Mets spending the way they spent, the Braves more or less staying status quo, the Phillies adding Trey Turner and Taijuan Walker to beef up their lineup and their rotation. If the Marlins were in, say, the NL Central, I would think they're in a chance to compete for a playoff spot because of the fact that they're in the East and are going to have to face those 3 teams a combined 39 times. That's one other part with the balanced schedule. The balanced schedule does, in a sense, work in their favor, but it
also now you're playing everyone. So now you're going to face all the big time teams in the AL at least 3 games.
Yep.
Plus everybody, you're going to face, you would face everybody before in the National League, but now you're going to get everyone in the American League, no matter what. You're not going to skirt past anybody. So that,
Correct.
in a way, sort of, you can't use that excuse because it sort of
Correct.
all balances out anyway. You're still going to get the Yankees and the Red Sox and everybody and the Rays, and well, they always get the Rays, which is a bad example, but you're going to get, you know, the top contenders. You're going to get the Astros. You're going to get all those teams. That's going to make up for all those other division games. So I mean, you can't blame the schedule. I mean, bottom line, some of the things we talked about, the bullpen has to be better. They have to hit more consistently, and there's still a lot of things on this team that is very iffy if it really will be better, you know. And that's why I don't know. Me personally, I want to see it happen, that they could win 80 or be a 500 team, but I still think they're fourth, and I would still err toward the 75 prediction, closer to that.
Yeah, and to finish my thoughts on this, I feel like it's going to be.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're good. No, you're good. No, it's fine. No, again, I feel like they are probably closer to that 76 wins than they are the 80. But when you also look in the grand scheme, if they get to 76 this year, every move that they've made in terms of players they've acquired were for longer than just this year. Gene Segura was 2-year deal and an option. Luis Arias is still under team control for, I believe, 2 more years after this. AJ Puck is under control for 5 more years. Everyone in that rotation, Cueto has the option, but we'll see what happens there. I'm assuming that's really just a holding spot for Yuri Perez long term. Everybody else in the rotation is either still pre-arb, under team control, or in Sandy's case, under contract for 4 more years. All of their bullpen pieces, with the exception of, I believe, Matt Barnes, is under team control. So they have, if they take the steps this year, then they still have everybody coming back, plus whatever they decide to add next offseason to keep it going. This isn't you have to do it all this year. They built it for a chance to make a run this year, but if they don't, it's not like they're completely pigeonholed and would have to completely start over if it doesn't work out this year. And with the fact that they're in the East and all 3 of those teams still being where they are, this gives them the chance to show, hey, we're taking the positive step if it works out. And we're also in position to keep moving forward, not just be the one year chance. Oh, we finished 4th. Oh, well. So they set themselves up to make this work as the stepping stone that they honestly should have and hoped to have done 2 or 3 years earlier in this rebuild, but didn't. They're finally getting to that point where they're trying to get that stability and also have a farm system that's going to be able to start rising up and have all the veterans with them for what they want to do.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a good point because it's what they need to do. It's what needs to happen. And now it's just prove it. Let's see. I mean, we know the odds are stacked against them, but you can't. You take that into consideration, but you can't totally lean on that completely. Not 100% too, because you have to see some improvement. So yeah, but it's prove it time, and here you go. New manager, and really first true full year in the post Jeter era, really too. If you think about it, after all the front office changes and internal changes and whatnot, now they're steering the wheel. You know what I mean? So that too, that's going to be the other interesting part. And then, like we said, new rules in baseball. So here we go. This is going to be fun, fresh start. Should we do? No, let's do. You know what? Let's. I don't know if we should do. I didn't do my homework on that part. If we were going to do who could win the World Series overall picks, I know we did that last year. Or should we wait till? Well, I don't know. The season starts by next pod. So put you on the spot right here, Jordan. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I'm just going to I'll go around the divisions. East, I'm keeping the Braves as division champs until proven otherwise, just because, again, everyone thought it was going to be the Mets. The Braves still end up getting there. And I just feel like, again, it's just the traditional annual, when are the Mets going to Mets? And unfortunately, they're already having to figure things out with their they're already figuring out their closure spot with Edwin Diaz out.
Yep, it already happened.
But I still think, but I obviously think the Mets are still going to get a wild card spot at minimum.
Yeah.
Central is going to come down to either the Cardinals or the Brewers. I'm going to go with the Brewers this year to take the division. Again, I mean, I love the 1-2 punch up top of their rotation between Burns and Woodruff.
Yeah.
Their offense is still good. It's still steady. The Cardinals, again, they have a lot of talent, especially on the position player side. Goldschmidt, Arenado, Jordan Walker, who was an absolute phenom during spring, 20-year-old going to make his MLB debut. But again, when I look at their starting pitching and I look at it and go, Adam Wainwright and Miles Mikolas are their 1 and 2. When I look at that again over the grand scheme of baseball and then what's behind them, I would take the Brewers pitching over the Cardinals pitching. And for me, that's what decides it there. The West going to be either the Dodgers or the Padres. And I think I'm going to pull the trigger and go San Diego.
Oh, all right. I was going to do it. Yeah. I was going to do it. That's why I was like, you saw my face. I was like, yeah, going to do it. Is going to do it. I'm going to do it.
Yeah. So Atlanta, Milwaukee, San Diego get the 3 division spots. The Mets, the Dodgers, and either the Phillies or the Cardinals get the wild card spots. It's either, again, I feel like it's going to come down to one of those things right towards the last day, sort of like it did last year.
Mm-hmm.
The AL, the West, you got to go Houston. That's just, to me, that's the no-brainer.
Yeah. Agreed.
The Central, I feel like it's going to be either the Twins or the Guardians. I'll lean towards the Twins. This is me more or less just guessing there. The East is the interesting one. Again, you got the Yankees, you got the Rays.
You're forgetting the team I might pick.
No, I know the Blue Jays are up there too, unless you're trying to go the Orioles, because I don't think Boston. Boston.
The Orioles maybe too. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the Red Sox will be in the fight, but I don't.
Yeah, no. Again, the East is tough. The AL East is tough. I'll go Yankees. I'll go Yankees to win the division, and then I feel like it's gonna. And then honestly, again, hard to bet again for just the entire run for the playoffs. It's hard to pick against the Astros when they've made it to the ALCS 6 consecutive years.
Yep.
I mean, it'll be the Astros against. Let's go Astros Padres.
I like it
for my World Series prediction.
Yeah.
Not picking a winner yet. I'm not picking a winner, but I'll go Astros Padres for the World Series matchup.
Not people are gonna say, oh, you're just copying, but no, that's what I was gonna say for the World Series. I was gonna differ with you in a few different places there for the other stuff, but yeah, I was thinking, that's why I said, is he gonna pull the trigger? Because I really think maybe this is that year San Diego beats them. I mean, we saw them get further in the playoffs anyway.
Yeah, and they loaded up this offseason too.
Oh yeah, and once Tatis comes back, I mean, it's gonna be ridiculous out there. So I mean, I think if they put it all together. LA will be in the playoffs as well. I mean, both of them will. There's no doubt. They're both too good not to, barring a catastrophe of injuries or something. So, I mean, to me, that's the West. I differ with you. I still kind of trust the Cardinals a little more. I don't know. I just think that veteran experience and their pitching's a little better. For a while there, I felt like their pitching was getting too up there in age, and it still is a little bit, but I think it's a little bit better now. The East, Atlanta to me is the winner. Phillies and the Mets will be. I'm with you. Probably the Mets should be a wild card. Stress should. The Phillies will have an outside shot, maybe. I'll go with them because I think the Diaz thing will hurt the Mets, and the Mets are the Mets. I'm sorry, I don't trust them. Yeah. So I think the Phillies will have a good shot at sneaking in as a wild card this year. I love the acquisitions they've made. I mean, we just saw what Trey Turner did the entire WBC. Let's see if that carries over. I mean, it's a long season, but I wouldn't be surprised if he has a pretty good start to that. And I'm going to make a surprisingly not homer pick. And that's why I was laughing when you were talking about the AL East. I think Toronto wins it. I love what Toronto's been doing. They've been coming up the last few years. I'm not going to be a homer. I think Toronto wins the AL East. The Yankees worry me in certain respects. They worry me in their starting pitching overall. Mm-hmm. Garrett Cole last year was not – he had his moments, but it wasn't, I'd have to see Garrett Cole be Garrett Cole to trust them. They'll make the playoffs.
Fair. That's fair.
They'll make the playoffs, and they have enough pitching to get there. The bats will be the bats. Aaron Judge, just like, just kind of insert what I said about Sandy following up an amazing season. what does Aaron Judge do this year to
Yeah.
top 62? Is he going to hit another 50 something? Is he going to threaten that again, or is he going to have a drop off? Those are all how healthy is our boy G going to be in that lineup? How much is he going to be able to stay in there and all the other pieces? So that's the East. The Orioles will make the playoffs. I'm gonna call that right now. I think they can get one of the wild cards. That division, obviously I follow that pretty closer than the other divisions in the AL, but I'll go with that. I'm with you on the Twins in the Central, and then Houston dominates the West.
And then, but there is one team in the West, and I'd be remiss not to say the Mariners have a chance to be a sneaky good team this year.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, their rotation. I mean, you look at their rotation: Luis Castillo, Robbie Ray, Logan Gilbert, and George Kirby as their 1 through 4.
That's the other wild card. That's the other wild card. I know they got them last year, but they're even better this year.
Yes.
So if all holds true, that's the other wild card, and that's what's going to make the East such a battle for all those spots, because you can't just say, oh, 4 of them are going to make it. No, not even three of them really, because they're going to. They maybe it might only be 2 to come out of there, and for me to say the Orioles are going to be one of the wild cards.
That means you're saying if you say the Yankees are in, then Tampa's out.
That means either Tampa's out, or that means that team in the Bronx is on notice that they better get their what together if they're going to make it back this season, because it is going to be a war in that division once again.
Yeah, and we're going to get to see it all unfold starting in just a couple days. So
get your MLB ticket packages ready. It all starts Thursday.
Yep. So should be a fun season one way or the other. Year 5 for me. I'm looking forward to it. After this year, I'm halfway to Hall of Fame voting eligibility. So just counting down till that. But that's going to do it for.
I think I'm on year 6 or 7 on that. So I'm getting close. So we'll see.
Yeah. So that'll wrap up this week's episode of Fish Bites. We'll be back again next week to recap what happened in the Marlins Mets series to open the season and start getting a better look at what to expect from this team. For Andre Fernandez, I'm Jordan McPherson. Thanks so much. We will see you guys again next week.